Raise your hand if you were ever told by your parents that you ate mud or chalk as a baby. Okay. Now, babies learn from curiosity and observation. So, is that what we were doing? We were observing our parents and learning from them? Obviously not. We have an inherent sense of curiosity as babies that leads us to explore the world. Now, I like to believe that this is the first trait of something called first principles thinking. First principles thinking, according to Aristotle, he was the man who founded this, says that if you can break something down to its foundational principles, its basic truths, its bare elements, then you will be capable of understanding it so fully that you can do absolutely anything you want with it. Let me give you an example of this first principles thinking. We all know that hardware whisperer in our family, right? The computer whisperer. The guy who can take apart a CPU, rebuild it to an optimal form that it can take a lot more processing. That's the person who can use first principles thinking effectively enough. That example tells you that this person can break down a computer or a CPU to its bare elements, each element having its own function, and he can rebuild it without an element, maybe with a new one, in a more optimal form. Now, can you move? And quick. Move to the next one. Again, please move. Okay. I'm going to give up on this PPT and say that there is a picture of me as a 10-year-old after this that shows me and my brothers filling a pail of water to go and waterboard a bunch of soil in the jungle behind our house. Now, why we used to do this was basically because we thought under that soil we used to find fossils. We used to take a bunch of rocks, smash them on the ground, smash them with hammers and try to look for fossils. Because at the time, the curiosity I had as a baby for some reason continued on to my 10-year-old self, and I saw National Geographic and said, oh, if they can do this, why can't I? Why can't I find fossils? Why can't I find an ammonite in my backyard? Now, that 10-year-old person, when they became 15, I asked myself, why am I so curious? And why am I not the kind of curious that reads everything? I'll immediately read, learn everything, and then go and find a model. I'm not like that. I have a 10-year-old cousin like that who can read absolutely anything and everything. He even at 10, by 10 had learned all the dinosaur names and had models for each of them, and that was enough for him to know about those dinosaurs and talk about them. Me, on the other hand, I needed to witness something on ground, and my parents were the fodder for that. In the years my dad spent in Delhi as a naval officer, we used to travel extensively. Can you move further? Further? We used to travel extensively, and these people, my parents, provided the fodder that my mind needed to continue to be curious. And honestly, around the age of 17 when I lost my father, I lost this curiosity towards the green world, the wild world. Or so I thought I did, because for a little while I became super fast. That thing you said about me being someone who started working at 17, that started then, right after I lost my father. I became a model, an actor. I said I wanted to bring Shashi Tharoor and do the first MUN in my college. I said I wanted to do film. I also wanted to work with a social enterprise and raise funds. I became an activist. At 21, I gave my first TEDx. I was going really fast. And at that entire time period, I had the first trigger of my life, which used to be just sitting and watching trees. Because life was such a weird, despicable place without my father and just with my mother struggling, that I thought stillness had to be found somewhere. I found it looking at trees, and the longer I looked, the longer I realized they're not just entities, they're whole communities. That tree is home to like beetles, bugs, spiders, butterflies, mammals with 4 legs, birds of various shapes, sizes, beaks. And eventually it hit me that nothing on that earth in this space, nothing is truly independent. We're all dependent. All those creatures need that tree. Now, there was a second trigger in my life that actually led me to the true purpose of my life, which I like to believe is my ikigai. That trigger happened because of the person sitting in the audience, and it happened at the age of 22 when I moved to Delhi. We were on a trip to Uttarakhand, alright, and we were crossing a hairpin bend that was just a few kilometers before Almora, and we saw this massive dumpster there. Massive dumpster that had 20 to 30 big birds, like this big, and I've never seen this big birds. I screamed at my friend and said, please stop, let's take a picture. The moment he stopped, we took a picture. We only had time for 3-4 pictures, and this was the picture we got of 4, I won't tell you right now, but they're actually steppe eagles. At the time, I was so curious and my friend was so irritated that we left. And throughout the trip, I couldn't let go of this thought that what were those birds? Why were they there? Why were they bigger than the birds I've seen in Delhi? Is there a reason they were sitting at the dumpster when they can feed somewhere else? They probably feed somewhere else, right? When I came back to Delhi 2 weeks later, it's like the universe dropped a sign in my lap. It said, here you go. I had this bird book that I found by these brilliant scientists in DLF Promenade. It had just launched that week and I happened to be wandering there, picked up the book, saw it and called my uncle in the US and said, I need 3,000 rupees. I was 21 and I said, I really need 3,000 rupees because I got the key to my future. I didn't know I had the key to my future at that time. I was just making a pitch because I needed 3,000 rupees. But I'll be honest to you guys, and I need you to ask yourself this question at this point. Is there something you are so curious about that you follow it to the bottom of its truth? You could just be holding the key to your reality, your actual satisfaction, your sense of purpose. You may not know it. Just a note. Now coming back to my story, after I found this book, bought it, 2 days later, I learned that those birds were steppe eagles. And this book, for the next 4 years, led me down a rabbit hole that I have enjoyed more than anything I've enjoyed in my life. I learned about birds, I learned about butterflies, I learned about moths, I learned about trees, I learned about soil, I learned about ecosystem, and that thing about nothing being independent came back to me. And it was a very important period in my life because I thought I wanted to make this my whole purpose. I was also storytelling, I was also acting, I was also a marketer at the time. I was trying to make money by doing storytelling for various businesses. I was trying to be a media personnel and this was calling out to me. It was calling out to me saying, you probably need to do this. So I almost started something called Birds in My Backyard. I said, I'm going to start a business where I take young kids around Delhi and show them birds. During that time period, I realized, yaar, main wo insaan nahi hu. I can't be the person that demands a bird to be available so that I can satiate this individual. I'm not sure I can put with that. So you know what? I'm just going to stick to my skill sets, what I'm really good at, understanding people, understanding their purposes, seeing their vision so clearly, associating with them and telling their stories. So I continued to be a marketer and I said I'm going to make great money off of this rather than starting up somewhere else altogether new while my conscience is getting affected. Because I was the kind of person that thought of this utopian world where, have you seen 7 Years in Tibet? 7 Years in Tibet has a scene where the Dalai Lama decides he needs his monastery to be built in a land which has no harm on it. So he made his monks pick up each and every little earthworm off of that land before building the monastery. He was so adamant for months that he wouldn't build that monastery till those earthworms were relocated. That's the kind of person I am. So clearly I can't make money off of this world right now. Now, at the end of that period, 4 years after that book, I decided to continue to make money. 200 something birds have been seen. I've earned lakhs of rupees. I even bought a camera for myself. I learned what it means to be able to shoot freehand without using a tripod, to stand for minutes and minutes and just wait, and then shake and then feel angry and wait. And at this time I realized I'm also making money. I'm also trying to do this, and I'm realizing that my world is moving fast again. Where are my trees that I used to look to for stillness? And at that time, it also hit me. And that time, by the way, is now. Like just a few months back, this year, when I've been working for one of the biggest business schools in the country right now, fastest growing. I'll take the biggest back. We're the fastest growing. May not be the biggest yet. But I feel like my life is moving faster than I had ever imagined. And I also realized human life has moved faster than we ever imagined. We started at survival, the little baby that needed to survive on the planet. We found safety when we went to sustenance. And we said, as a mass, we need to sustain ourselves. We need to find sustenance. When we did find some comfort with our food security and our love security, we said, okay, en masse, we need success. We as a species need to move towards success, and not as a species. Today this applies to each and every one of us individually. This drive for success, I got to get to where I got to get to. And we moved so fast that today the demand from everything around us is sustainability, isn't it? Now, I beg the question, if we desperately need sustainability, we need it to merge with our success, our ideas of success. I want to draw back to what success actually means, and I have one example here. Do you guys think Elon Musk would be counted as a successful person? I think so. And he's a person who built a toy that he sold overnight 20,000 off because he could. And he created that demand, and then he changed the name of that toy because customs wouldn't allow it across waters, called it not a flamethrower, and sold it anyways. That's a problem solver. This is the man that solved NASA's cost problem by building a rocket launcher that was far cheaper and far more optimized and could come back to Earth. That today he's probably one of NASA's biggest service providers. Now this man attributes his success to first principles thinking. This brings me back to first principles thinking because I want to talk to you guys about the fact that we as human beings, if we are capable of breaking down problems on ground, if Elon Musk and Aristotle are capable of taking fundamental truths apart, like taking this lamp apart and saying, what can I do with that brick? What can I do with the brass? Taking that table apart and saying, what can I do with that cross section? Then so can we. The fact is, you guys are already doing first principles thinking on a daily basis. Some basic examples are that chef friend of yours who decides, oh, today I have mushrooms, I have eggs, I have Maggie. What can I do? Let me make a Maggie omelette. There would have been some guy, the first guy who decided that Maggie omelette is the way to go, right? These are people, including people, say for example, a techie. You guys are all studying tech. These are people who can take apart entire entities and systems and put them back together for a more optimal purpose. That's what Elon and Aristotle both are capable of doing, and that's what you guys are capable of doing in order to be able to deal better with the world around us. We need to be able to do this. We need to be able to deal with the world and ourselves a lot better. And for that, I believe first principles thinking assisted me on two very important occasions, and I discovered two very, very important first principles of my body and my brain that I believe can help you guys. The world is continuing to be a very, very chaotic place. Our lives are filled with choices, more than we ever had. Our lives are filled with dilemmas because we have that many choices. We have more than we ever asked for, and we don't know how much is enough. At that point in our lives, there's one thing we need to remember, and one thing we need to know we have control over. That is ourselves, this person that spends 99% of their time inside this body. Now that brings me to the first principle of the body that I want you guys to remember. I want you guys to remember this because this is going to be accessible to you at any given second of your life. It's your breath. For a long period in my life, I have suffered. I have seen death. I have seen attacks. I have unfortunately been party to saving people from really terrible situations. I've been in emotionally scarring and damaging relationships. I've been in accidents. I've been sabotaged and gaslit. We all have. But this stuff comes back to bite us. And one such incident when I felt I was completely overwhelmed by an anxiety attack, it was my breath, the first principle of my body that made me realize that my brain and my potential is always accessible to me at the drop of a hat. I'm sitting in the middle of work at an anxiety attack that's caused me to feel like I can't breathe from down here. My entire spine is in like tingles and my brain suddenly feels heavy with my vision actually getting clogged. And this is an overachiever person who never experiences this. So the first time it happened, I couldn't believe myself. I ran out into the balcony. I sat there and said, if there's anything I can control, it's my breath. So I started breathing. For 3 minutes, I filled my brain with oxygen. 3 minutes later, I closed my eyes and tried to slow it down. Not tried, it automatically happens because when you start breathing slower, your body pumps slower. And when that started to happen, let me explain, I had a visualization that changed my perspective and my state of existence. I was sitting there, immediately having closed my eyes, I saw something as big as this on my arm, and it looked like a band. And the moment I saw it, I looked up, and this is all in my mind's eye. My entire mind's eye sky is full of balloons. They're not green, yellow, gray. They're gray, black, brown, weird blues, and I can't see the sky above. And in that minute or second that I was looking up, I looked down, and there is a hand that has come into the picture with a scissor, and it's slowly cutting away. That cut is happening, I can visualize all of this, slowly balloons are flying away and tears are flowing down my eyes. I couldn't believe I was seeing this, but I was alone and I wasn't actually watching it on a screen. I sat there for 10 minutes just crying and realizing I just had to feel lighter. I had to apparently feel light. I was feeling very, very heavy, and this was a moment when I had to feel truly light. It was that minute when I released my breath from my lungs that I decided to allow the breath into my body that my atoms decided to shift. My brain allowed space for more thought than what it was. And my brain said, right now you just need to release. So it said, here's the balloons that you are tied to, cut them. And I did. Now this is the first incident. Now the second incident I want you to pay attention to, and the first principle of our body and brain that is constantly accessible to us is curiosity. The curiosity that led me from being that random mud-eating child to being the child that waterboarded soil to find a bunch of fossils that weren't actually there, to being the child that found that book and then found 300 and 400 plus birds that I continue to chase even today. The second time I had an anxiety attack was when I thought I was going to get paralyzed, and it happened a few months later when a bunch of things really came up to me. I was going through a very stressful day at work, somebody was being really mean to me, my family was falling apart, we had just lost my aunt, and things were everywhere. Things were really everywhere. And I didn't have support systems. I didn't have a friend who I could look to and say, hey, I want to talk. That day was heavy. I couldn't feel my spine. I woke up from a really bad meeting at work and walked to my dining table because I used to work remotely, and for some reason I just crashed on the ground. And I couldn't move in that few minutes. For some reason I just couldn't. I used my breath. The first thing that was accessible to me was my breath. I said, I'm going to breathe again like a crazy person. The man in the audience who just laughed, you should laugh again, because I went at it again. And I felt my breath all over my body. And when I closed my eyes at the end of that 3-minute period, my brain showed me the visual of paining parts of my body. Nothing but just throbbing reds in my body. Throbbing, like here, and here, and here. This was the most throbbing part, this part, because posture, right? We don't even realize how we work on our laptops. Coming back, when I realized this, I continued to breathe, but this time, as I breathed, I said, I want to ease my physical body. The only way to ease my physical body is to ensure that I move, is what my brain told me. So slowly, along with my breath, from the ground, I just went side to side. I went side to side. I kept going side to side. I kept breathing, and I stood up. It took me 10 minutes to keep doing the side to side to eventually stand up. But I realized, repeating something, merely showing up at it again and again, can allow you to achieve the state that comes at the end of it, for your body, for your being and your atoms. Now this is me wrapping up my conversation. I just shared 2 truly personal experiences with you. I stand here as someone who spent 12 years in marketing, as someone who spent almost 12 years being an actor. You'll see some of my work on the internet as ads. I stand here as someone who learned about biodiversity on my own. I stand here as someone who's seen more than I would have imagined I have seen in my life, and I realized one thing, that if there is a purpose to me, that purpose is the wild world. It is to learn about the wild world. That day, the book I held, that book continues to be in my life even today, and I continue to go to the wild world again and again. I know I want to contribute to the wild world one fine day. It's going to happen, but it's not going to happen at a price. It's going to be me giving and not getting back, maybe not even wanting back. Or maybe finding a balance where nothing is harmed. But for now, I'm happy with observation. I don't need to make money off of this. I don't need to run as fast as I need to run towards it to ensure I've made a mark. I'm satisfied. That state of satisfaction I was able to achieve because I'm constantly in touch with my first principles.